Silence is not the absence of response. It is the presence of mastery. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop trying to convince the world of your intentions, something changes in the air around you. People begin to feel your absence not as emptiness, but as a pressure. It's in that stillness where your true weight is revealed. Words dilute energy. Every time you explain, justify, or defend, you hand over fragments of your power to those who have not earned the right to hold it. Silence, on the other hand, keeps your power compact, concentrated, unbroken. It forces others to interpret you, to fill in the blanks with their imagination, and imagination always paints a version of you larger than life. This is why silence is feared by the insecure and respected by the wise. The loudest man in the room is never the one in control. He's the one trying to convince everyone, including himself, that he still is. Silence requires strength because it means you've learned to live without the drug of validation. It means you no longer need to be understood to be at peace. When you stay silent, you remove the weapon others use against you. Reaction. They can provoke, accuse, manipulate, but they can't predict, and unpredictability is the purest form of control. The moment you answer noise with silence, you change the power dynamic. Suddenly, the one who was attacking begins to chase your reaction, to fill the void you've created. Your silence becomes the mirror in which they see themselves unravel. The truth is, silence speaks a language louder than confrontation. It says, "I don't need to prove anything." It says, "You can't touch me." When you master this, you stop bleeding energy into meaningless conversations and start feeding your inner equilibrium. You begin to notice how people grow uncomfortable when they can't read you. They start projecting their own fears, guilt, and confusion onto your quiet presence. That's the hidden mechanism of power. Your silence forces others to reveal themselves. They confess their insecurities by trying to decode you. They expose their dependence by craving your validation. And you, the one who watches in calm composure, learn more about them in their noise than they could ever learn about you in your silence. Power is not about dominance through force. It's about control through restraint. A quiet man in a world addicted to attention becomes a paradox, an enigma that everyone wants to understand, but no one can fully grasp. And that mystery breeds fascination. In relationships, in business, in life, the person who talks less always holds the frame, because every word they do choose to speak carries the weight of rarity. When you become selective with your words, people start listening. They sense that if you are quiet, it's not because you have nothing to say, it's because you're filtering what deserves to be said. Silence, therefore, becomes a test of worth. Only the deserving earn your voice. The rest must learn to sit with their discomfort. Most people speak to escape silence, because silence confronts them with themselves. That's why they fill every space with noise, opinions, gossip, explanations, as if sound could protect them from introspection. But those who understand silence do not run from it. They build their strength within it. When you choose not to respond, you are not being passive. You are training the muscle of emotional control. You are teaching yourself that peace is not found in being heard. It is found in understanding when speaking is unnecessary. The weak man reacts to every word. The strong man reacts to meaning. The wise man reacts to nothing. He listens, he observes, and he waits, not out of fear but out of patience, because he knows that truth and time always reveal what words cannot. Your silence becomes your shield, your filter, and your weapon all at once. It filters the genuine from the fake, shields you from manipulation, and disarms those who mistake volume for power. Those who underestimate your quiet will soon realize that silence doesn't mean you are unaware. It means you are calculating. Every second you choose not to speak, you are gathering information, reading intentions, mapping weaknesses. You learn to hear what people are truly saying behind their words, to sense the emotional frequencies they hide beneath their tone. Silence turns you into an observer of the invisible, and once you see the invisible, you can control the visible. In a world built on reaction, restraint is revolution. When others lose themselves in the chaos of proving, defending, and competing, your stillness becomes an anchor. You are the one who does not flinch, who does not justify, who does not rush to fill the silence, and that composure becomes magnetic. It's the quiet man at the table who commands the room without speaking. It's the one who doesn't explain who becomes the center of curiosity. The human mind craves certainty, and when it can't find it, it starts building stories. Your silence feeds those stories. It makes people wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you know. It creates an aura of quiet superiority, not because you think you're better, but because you don't feel the need to prove you aren't. That's the paradox of power. When you stop chasing attention, it starts chasing you. You become the gravity others orbit around, because you've mastered what few can, emotional economy. You spend your words like gold coins, not like confetti. You understand that speaking less doesn't make you invisible, it makes you invaluable. Those who truly hold power do not announce it, they embody it. And silence is how power breathes. The moment you realize that not every question deserves an answer, not every attack deserves a defense, not every moment deserves a reaction, you start living above the noise, you start conserving your mental energy for creation, strategy, and clarity. You start becoming untouchable, not because you isolate yourself, but because you rise above the frequency of chaos. Your silence becomes sacred space, where your thoughts are protected, your emotions are guarded, and your intuition is amplified. And in that sacred stillness, you start hearing what the loud cannot, the subtle whispers of truth that guide the powerful few. In silence, you find perspective. You begin to see the world not as it appears, but as it is. You stop being controlled by impulses and start controlling outcomes. Because every time you resist the urge to respond, you strengthen your will. Every time you let silence answer for you, you elevate your position. You stop playing emotional chess with amateurs and start mastering the game of invisible influence. The crowd interprets silence as weakness, but the masters know it's the ultimate form of strength, because power that needs to be proven is already unstable. Real power doesn't announce itself. It watches, it studies, it waits. And when it moves, it does so with precision. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember, your reaction is the prize they want. Deny them that, and you keep control. Every time you speak, make sure it's from choice, not compulsion. Every time you stay silent, know that your silence is speaking for you and saying, "I'm not on your level." That's the secret of those who command respect without demanding it. They've mastered the art of quiet dominance. They don't need to prove, argue, or explain, because their energy already declares who they are. The one who understands this lives above the noise, beyond the reach of manipulation, and in harmony with his own power. Silence is not absence, it is command, and the one who commands his silence commands the world. Silence is misunderstood by the weak because it threatens the illusion they live in. They see silence as surrender, as if not responding means they have won the exchange. But the truth is the opposite. The one who stays silent has already transcended the game. The noisy one is still fighting for recognition. The silent one has already detached from the need for it. Detachment is a higher form of dominance. When you no longer seek to win, you become impossible to defeat. Silence removes you from the battlefield entirely. It turns you into a phantom presence that cannot be provoked, cannot be predicted, cannot be manipulated. That absence of reaction disturbs people because it denies them feedback. They want to know what you think, what you feel, what you intend, and your silence denies them that satisfaction. In that denial, they begin to reveal their dependence. They start over-explaining, overreaching, overreacting. They collapse under the pressure of not knowing. The more you say nothing, the more their imagination works against them. They start projecting weakness onto you, then slowly fear that maybe it's strength. And that uncertainty eats away at them. That is the silent man's advantage. He turns the enemy's own mind into the battlefield. You see, silence is not passive, it's psychological warfare. When you don't explain, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability forces others into self-doubt. They start questioning their own assumptions, replaying interactions, wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you might know. You occupy their thoughts without having to do anything. That's how silence multiplies your presence, not through sound but through absence. Absence that echoes. When you disappear, when you stop feeding noise, you become magnetic. People who once ignored your words start craving your attention. They begin to realize that silence was not your weakness, it was your filter. It was the method you used to separate those who truly see you from those who only consume you. Most people are addicted to reaction because they mistake reaction for connection. They think being loud is being alive. But the wise understand that true connection begins in stillness. It's in the quiet moments where clarity surfaces, where intentions reveal themselves, where truth stands unmasked. The more you learn to be still, the more you see how frantic the world really is. Everyone rushing to be heard, to be seen, to prove something, and yet the more they speak, the less they say. The more they show, the less they are. Silence strips away pretense. It forces authenticity. You can't fake composure in silence. You either have it or you don't. When you can sit in silence with someone and feel no anxiety, no need to fill the air, that's real confidence, because only those at peace within can handle the quiet. Those who fear silence are revealing their inner chaos. They need noise to drown it. They need validation to forget their own emptiness. So every time you stay silent in a world like this, you're not just withholding words, you're exposing truth. You're showing who's in control and who's dependent. The one who needs to be heard is enslaved by his own ego. The one who doesn't care to be understood is free. Silence is the language of the free. And once you learn to speak it, you'll notice how quickly it changes your reality. Opportunities appear when you're not begging for them. Respect grows when you stop chasing it. Influence expands when you stop explaining it. Because people begin to feel something about you they can't quite name. Certainty. Your silence radiates it. It says, "I know who I am." And those words, though unspoken, have more weight than anything shouted aloud. There's a reason ancient masters and leaders spoke less, but meant more. They understood that silence amplifies impact. Every word that breaks it must be worthy of it. The fewer words you use, the more sacred they become. This is why silence and authority are inseparable. You cannot command respect while being overly expressive, because expression reveals need. Need for understanding, need for approval, need for validation. The silent man has no such needs. He's whole within himself. His silence becomes a mirror. It reflects the strength of his inner structure. People feel that structure and subconsciously align to it. It's not charisma, it's containment. It's the calm center that holds its own gravity. When others lose control, your silence becomes the still point around which everything spins. And that stillness draws power like a magnet. You can see it in every hierarchy. The king doesn't speak unless it's necessary. His silence makes the court whisper. The moment he does speak, even a few words reshape the atmosphere. That is not coincidence. That is the mathematics of power. The less you speak, the more valuable your voice becomes. The more you withdraw, the more others advance toward you. Silence creates demand. And in human psychology, demand is the foundation of influence. The same law applies in your personal life. The one who remains silent after conflict, who doesn't rush to justify or argue, ends up commanding attention and curiosity. Silence becomes emotional leverage. People will chase your response just to feel equilibrium again. They'll apologize without you asking. They'll seek you without knowing why. Because silence triggers reflection. It forces them to look inward. And when they look inward, they find discomfort. That discomfort becomes memory. They remember how your silence made them feel uncertain, exposed, fascinated. That memory keeps your presence alive long after you've left. That's the secret. Silence extends your influence beyond your presence. Words can be forgotten, reactions fade, but silence lingers. It keeps living in the mind of others, whispering questions that never find answers. That is how silence transcends time and space. It stays when sound dies. When you master silence, you master timing. You no longer speak to fill air, you speak to shape it. You no longer answer every message. You respond when it serves purpose. You no longer reveal your plans. You move in silence until the outcome speaks for itself. And when it does, the impact is multiplied, because surprise is the offspring of silence. Those who act quietly shock the loud. They make noise look foolish. They make chaos look weak. Silence is not withdrawal from life. It's the higher form of participation. You engage only where energy is worth it. You reserve your presence like a rare currency, and in doing so, its value rises. That's how the powerful move, silently, intentionally, efficiently. They're not absent. They're invisible until necessary, and when they appear, everything stops. Because everyone knows something important is about to happen, that's what silence prepares, anticipation. And anticipation is one of the greatest forms of control. When people wait for your response, your presence, your approval, they are already orbiting your influence. The world will always misunderstand silence because it cannot monetize it, cannot measure it, cannot compete with it. But power isn't meant to be understood. It's meant to be felt. And silence is power felt without words. Silence has a frequency, and those who can hear it move differently through the world. It's not the absence of communication, but the mastery of it. The ability to control the emotional tempo of every interaction without ever raising your voice. You begin to notice how quickly others betray themselves in conversation. Their need to fill silence exposes their insecurity. Their over-explanation reveals guilt. Their nervous laughter hides discomfort. In that moment, you learn that silence is the purest form of listening, not just to others but to everything. To the tone beneath the words, to the rhythm of tension, to the pulse of intention. The one who listens silently begins to see beyond masks. And when you can see beyond masks, you gain the kind of power that cannot be taken from you, psychological advantage. You stop responding to the noise and start responding to patterns. You begin to detect when someone's energy shifts, when their motives turn, when their words stop matching their eyes. This awareness sharpens your intuition, and intuition is the highest form of intelligence in a world addicted to distraction. Silence is the forge where that intuition is born, because in silence, the mind clears. It becomes still enough to detect truth, and truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. This is why silence terrifies the average person, because it removes the fog that comforts them. They fear what might surface in the quiet. But the strong man seeks it. He knows that silence cleans the inner landscape, burns away illusions, and leaves only clarity behind. That clarity becomes your compass. When you are silent, decisions stop being emotional reactions and start becoming deliberate movements. You stop being pulled by chaos and start directing it. And soon you realize that silence is not just a behavioral choice, it's a strategy. It's how you move through conversations, negotiations, and conflicts without ever losing ground. The silent man never plays all his cards. He doesn't reveal his plans, his emotions, or his weaknesses. He lets others overexpose themselves, giving him everything he needs while he gives nothing in return. This asymmetry creates psychological dominance. It's not about manipulation. It's about mastery of energy exchange. In every human interaction, there's an invisible trade of power. The one who speaks first often loses it. The one who fills the silence first loses control. But the one who can hold silence the longest, that's the one who commands. It's a game of endurance, of patience, of invisible willpower, and those who master it become untouchable. Because silence cannot be argued with, you can debate words, but you can't debate silence. It stands unmovable. It forces others to wrestle with themselves. That's why silence is both armor and weapon. It protects your boundaries while piercing through the defenses of others. It makes people uneasy because it denies them control. They can't read what you're thinking, and that frustrates them. They can't predict your reaction, and that weakens them. So they overstep, over-explain, over-commit, revealing themselves in the process. Silence is not just a lack of noise, it's a mirror that reflects the mind of whoever faces it. The insecure project fear, the manipulative project guilt, the powerful project calm. What you see in silence is who you are, and that's why mastering it is mastering yourself, because silence teaches you restraint, and restraint is the skeleton of discipline. When you can hold your tongue, you can hold your temper. When you can hold your temper, you can hold your destiny. Everything starts with the ability to be still. The world trains you to speak fast, decide fast, move fast. But power is built in slowness, in watching, in waiting, because only those who wait can strike with precision. Silence trains the mind to observe patterns before acting. It removes you from the chaos of impulse. It gives you time to calculate, to understand, to predict. Those who mock silence are the ones who fear reflection, because reflection brings accountability. In silence, you face yourself. You hear the echoes of your choices. You confront the truths you tried to bury. And when you face them, you grow. That growth turns into calm. That calm becomes presence. And that presence becomes power. Because when you walk into a room with inner silence, people feel it. They can't explain why they're drawn to you, but they are. They feel safe or intimidated or fascinated, but they feel something. Your silence becomes a field of energy that influences without words. You speak through aura, not sentences. That's the highest form of communication, the one beyond sound. And when you reach that level, everything about you changes. You stop announcing your plans because results speak louder. You stop arguing because peace is proof. You stop chasing because gravity never runs. People will call you distant, cold, detached. Let them. Their judgment is proof that they still crave noise, but you will know that silence isn't detachment, it's refinement. It's the purification of energy, the removal of the unnecessary, the return to essence. It's how you reclaim yourself from the world's chaos and start living from a position of centered awareness. When you operate from silence, every move becomes intentional, every reaction becomes choice, every word becomes art, and the more you practice it, the less you need to prove. You stop defending your reputation because you understand that silence is the ultimate reputation. It's what remains when the noise fades, the perception that you don't need to speak to matter. That's real power, the kind that outlives sound, the kind that cannot be questioned because it doesn't explain. So the next time you feel the urge to defend yourself, pause. The next time someone tries to provoke you, wait. The next time you want to be understood, remember, silence already says everything. Those who matter will understand it. Those who don't were never meant to. Silence is the moment when strength becomes invisible but undeniable. It's the quiet in the center of a storm that no wind can touch. You learn that power is not about speaking, convincing, or performing. It's about existing with unshakable certainty. Those who need to be heard are still uncertain of their truth. Those who can stay silent know their truth has already been written through their actions, their composure, their energy. You begin to understand that silence is the ultimate proof of self-trust. When you no longer need the world to validate what you know within, you free yourself from every invisible chain that has ever made you reactive. That's when silence transforms from mere behavior into spiritual dominance. It becomes the language of those who have mastered their own mind. And in that mastery, you stop being controlled by emotion. You start observing emotion as it rises, as it fades, as it tries to dictate your response. And you realize it's not stronger than you. You realize that silence gives you command over time. When others rush to answer, you watch. When they rush to judge, you analyze. When they rush to act, you wait. Time bends for those who know how to be still. Because silence slows perception, it allows you to see what impulsive people miss. You start noticing the subtle shifts, the way someone avoids eye contact, the way they choose their words, the way silence makes them restless. You begin to navigate reality through invisible signals, not spoken ones. This is why the powerful rarely explain. Explanation weakens position. It reveals thought. It gives the opponent a map to your logic. But silence? Silence leaves them lost. They start assuming. They start creating stories. They build false narratives just to make sense of your quiet. And in doing so, they expose their own weakness. You become the master, not by controlling others, but by controlling yourself. That's the deepest layer of power. Self-command. The ability to say nothing, to do nothing, yet make everything move around you. And once you reach that level, silence becomes sacred. You begin to protect it. You no longer waste it on empty people or hollow situations. You choose where your words go, because you understand they carry energy. The more disciplined you become with your speech, the more potent your silence grows. People begin to read it as confidence, mystery, wisdom, and all of those are true. But what they're really sensing is self-possession. You belong entirely to yourself, and that frightens them, because most people are enslaved by their need to be seen. They perform constantly, hoping to be validated. But when they meet someone who doesn't seek approval, they don't know how to behave. They either admire you or resent you. Both reactions confirm your power. Silence polarizes. And that's how influence begins. You were not meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be felt by the few who can perceive depth without needing words. That's what silence does. It filters. It removes the shallow. It attracts the rare. And in that process, it purifies your world. You start surrounding yourself with those who don't fear quiet, who don't demand noise, who can share presence without intrusion. That's where real connection lives, in stillness, in mutual respect, in the unspoken. The louder the world becomes, the rarer that peace feels, and the more valuable it becomes. You start to notice that those who make the most noise often have the least stability. The loudest claims of confidence are usually echoes of insecurity, but silence never lies. It doesn't advertise strength, it embodies it. That's why you'll find that the most dangerous people rarely raise their voice. The most intelligent rarely rush to speak. The most powerful rarely need to declare. They move with the calm certainty of those who have nothing to prove. Their silence is not emptiness, it's readiness. It's observation, preparation, and patience blending into precision. You start to live by this rhythm too. You learn that silence before speaking gives power to words. That silence before reacting gives power to decisions. That silence before judging gives power to perception. Each pause becomes a weapon, a moment of gathering clarity while others are busy losing theirs. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because you understand that silence isn't about others. It's about you. It's about conserving energy, maintaining dignity, and mastering emotion. The noise of the world fades when you no longer respond to it. You become like a mountain, unbothered by storms, untouched by echoes. You learn to let noise pass through you like wind through branches. Because silence isn't resistance, it's transcendence. It's what happens when you realize your peace is worth more than your opinion. When you understand that sometimes saying nothing is the most eloquent statement you can make, that no defense is the strongest defense, no explanation the clearest truth. And as you live this way, you start to notice the shift. People respect you differently. They measure their words around you. They seek your approval even when you never offered it. They sense that you hear everything, but say only what matters. You become an archetype of control in a chaotic world, a reminder that true power isn't in being seen, but in being felt. And that feeling grows stronger the quieter you become. In time, your silence begins to carry presence, even when you're not there. People remember how it felt to be around you. They remember the calm, the composure, the weight. That's how silence outlasts presence. It becomes memory, and that memory becomes legacy. Because long after your words are forgotten, your stillness will still be teaching them. It will still be haunting them. It will still be guiding them toward the truth they couldn't see when you were speaking. That's why silence is not just an answer. It's the strongest one. It ends arguments without starting them. It commands attention without seeking it. It asserts dominance without aggression. It declares truth without noise. Silence is not absence. It is power refined to its purest form. Silence is the summit of power because it transcends every level of reaction. It is the state where nothing external can disturb what exists within you. When you arrive there, you no longer need to raise your voice to be understood. You no longer need to explain your worth. You no longer need to defend your choices. Everything about your presence becomes self-evident. You become like still water, calm on the surface, but deep enough to drown illusions. People feel that depth before they understand it. They sense the difference between someone who is quiet out of fear and someone who is quiet out of mastery. One shrinks into silence because he has no voice. The other steps into silence because his voice has become too powerful to waste. This is the silence that transforms you from participant to observer, from reactive to deliberate, from visible to untouchable. You stop competing for space in the noise and start creating meaning in the void. You start to see how silence controls rhythm, how it slows conversations, shifts energy, resets dynamics. In conflict, silence disarms. In negotiation, silence pressures. In relationships, silence tests. In all things, silence clarifies. It reveals who respects you and who only values access. It reveals who seeks to understand you and who only wants to consume you. And as the world reacts to your quiet, you learn everything you need to know about them without saying a word. That's the paradox of silence. It communicates more than sound ever could. It's a signal of control, of self-possession, of emotional independence. The man who can remain silent under attack has already won, because he's proven that the external cannot shake his internal. That's what the loud can never grasp, that restraint is not weakness, but supremacy. When you stay silent, you refuse to be pulled into someone else's emotional field. You keep your center, and that center is the true seat of power. From there, you don't chase, you attract. You don't explain, you demonstrate. You don't argue, you act. The one who can master silence no longer reacts to life. He directs it. Every pause becomes intention. Every absence becomes a statement. Every still moment becomes a reminder that he's in control of his energy. You'll begin to see how silence even reshapes your identity. You become lighter, calmer, sharper. You realize how much of your life was spent explaining yourself to those who never deserved to understand you. You realize how much energy you gave away in trying to be perceived correctly. Silence ends that war. It takes you off the battlefield completely. Because you understand that those who want to misunderstand you will do so regardless of your words, and those who truly see you never needed them. So you stop performing and you start existing. Existing in peace, existing in strength, existing in quiet certainty. The moment you do, life begins to align differently. Opportunities flow toward you because your energy is stable. People trust you more because you no longer broadcast desperation. You stop reacting and start magnetizing. That's the secret of silent power. It's magnetic, not aggressive. It doesn't push, it pulls. It doesn't demand, it commands. That's why silence is the language of kings, of sages, of those who have outgrown the need to prove anything to anyone. And once you embody it, everything changes. You notice how your silence begins to shape environments. Rooms grow quieter when you enter. Arguments lose intensity when you refuse to engage. People begin to weigh their words more carefully when speaking to you. They feel your silence as presence, dense, grounded, undeniable. You have become the equilibrium in a world of chaos. And that equilibrium is irresistible. The truth is, silence has always been misunderstood because it's unteachable. It can't be faked. You either earn it through discipline, or you collapse into noise. You either rule your emotions or they rule you. And the moment you choose silence over reaction, you choose evolution over repetition. Because most people repeat their lives through the same emotional triggers, defending, explaining, arguing, performing, trapped in endless cycles of proving. But silence breaks the cycle. It cuts through illusion and opens the space where growth can occur. That space is where wisdom begins. Wisdom doesn't speak in volume, it whispers through silence. It doesn't shout for attention, it waits to be sought. That's the difference between influence and authority. Influence needs eyes, authority only needs presence, and silence is presence perfected. When you understand that, you'll stop chasing acknowledgement and start cultivating energy. You'll stop needing to be right and start valuing peace. You'll stop trying to be seen and start becoming undeniable. Silence will become your armor, your sanctuary, your truth. Because silence isn't the absence of power, it's the proof of it. Those who speak may be heard for a moment, but those who stay silent are remembered for a lifetime. So let the world talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them fill the air with noise. You stay still. You stay aware. You stay sovereign. In the end, they will come to realize what you always knew, that real power doesn't shout, it whispers. Subscribe, because those who understand this truth are already awake.